What if the 22 Major Arcana are not just separate tarot cards, but one complete and effective system? A complete map of the human journey of becoming. A symbolic path that takes us from innocence to wholeness, from instinct to consciousness, from fragmentation to integration. Because that's one of the deepest ways of understanding the Major Arcana. Not as an isolated set of meanings, but as a living sequence of transformation. And once you begin to see them in that way, the tarot becomes something far more profound than a set of symbols for readings. It becomes a mirror of your soul's journey here in the physical. I've actually recently published a comprehensive book on the subject called, obviously enough, The Tarot, Major Arcana. You can get it on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below this video. So anyway, welcome back to the Tarot Major Arcana. In the last video, I explored what the Major Arcana really are and why they can be understood as archetypal patterns rather than just tarot card meanings. In this video, I want to take the next step and explore how the 22 Major Arcana can be seen as a complete journey of inner transformation. Because while each card has its own archetypal meaning, the deeper truth is that together they form a path, a progression, a map of life, growth, breakdown, healing, awakening, and completion. And when you understand that, the Major Arcana stop feeling like a set of disconnected images and begin to reveal themselves as one coherent, spiritual, and psychological story. Let's look at the Major Arcana as a journey. One of the most common ways people talk about this idea is through what is often called the Fool's Journey. And while that phrase is useful, I want to broaden it a little, because this is not only about the journey of the Fool. It's the journey of human consciousness itself. It's the movement from raw potential into lived experience, from unconscious into awareness, from innocence into tasted maturity, and from fragmentation into a deeper kind of wholeness. And ultimately, that journey doesn't unfold in a straight line in real life. We may feel stuck between one threshold and another. But the sequence still matters because it gives us a meaningful structure through which to understand what kind of inner process we may be living through. The first movement is innocence to emergence. The journey begins, of course, with the Fool. The Fool is innocence, openness, trust, and the willingness to begin before certainty exists. It's the raw impulse towards life, the urge to step into experience, to move, to become. Then comes the Magician, where energy begins to take direction. This is agency, will, and expression. The discovery that consciousness is not only to perceive life, but can shape and direct it as well. Then the High Priestess introduces inwardness, silence, intuition, and inner knowing. The understanding that not all truth comes through action. Some truth must be received, waited for, and fell inwardly. Then the Empress brings nourishment, embodiment, receptivity, creativity, and relationship with life as abundance. And the Emperor brings structure, authority, boundary, order, and the formation of stable identity. So already, very early in the journey, we can see that the Major Arcana are describing essential stages of development. We discover will, we discover inner knowing, we discover nurturance, and we discover form. That's not just tarot, it's all of life itself. So let's look now at relationship, meaning, and self-command. As the journey continues, the Hierophant introduces transmitted meaning, inherited systems, teaching, values, and belonging. This is where we begin to understand that we're shaped not only by instinct and individuality, but also by culture, belief, family, and tradition. Then the lovers opens the field of relationship, polarity, attraction, vulnerability, and choice. This is not just about romance, it's about the moment when relationship reveals truth. When we're asked to choose consciously, when we see that love, longing, and value are deeply intertwined, then comes the chariot, which brings discipline, direction, and self-command. This is where will must become mastery, where inner conflict must be harnessed, where movement requires focus, not just desire. Then strength refines that even further, because real power is not force. It's the capacity to remain present, regulated, and conscious in relationship to intensity. And the Hermit then turns us inward again, but at a deeper level this time. No longer innocence, no longer merely instinct, but discernment in solitude. The search for truth beyond noise. So by the midpoint of the journey, the Major Arcana have already taken us through innocence, agency, intuition, relationship, structure, belonging, choice, discipline, and self-reflection. This is an extraordinary map of human development. Now comes the turning point into deeper transformation. The Major Arcana do not stop at personal development. They move into something far deeper. They move into transformation. The Wheel of Fortune reminds us that life is cyclical, that patterns repeat, that change is lawful, that there are turning points that we simply do not control completely. Justice brings truth, consequence, accountability, and right measure. It asks us to see clearly, to stop distorting, to meet reality with greater honesty. Then the Hangman introduces a profound shift, because now the journey demands surrender, pause, and suspension, a reversal of perspective. This is where forcing no longer works, and where transformation begins to require letting go. That leads naturally into death, which is not merely loss, but release, and a required transition. It's the ending of a form that has reached completion, the recognition that life moves forward not only through gain, but through many necessary points of letting go. And then Temperance begins the healing, the rebalancing, the integration of what has been broken apart or divided. So now we're no longer simply forming ourselves. We're being transformed through change, truth, surrender, and release. Then we find ourselves in shadow, rupture, and healing, because the journey still has deeper to go, and no real path of transformation avoids shadow. The devil reveals bondage, attachment, shame, compulsion, and false captivity. It shows us where we're still chained to what diminishes us, where identity is fused with suffering, where we remain entangled in patterns we may imagine we cannot leave. Then comes the Tower, and this is one of the greatest archetypes of rupture, collapse, and revelation. The breaking of what can no longer stand. It's what happens when a false structure is no longer sustainable, when something breaks, not simply to destroy us, but to expose truth. And then after rupture comes the star. Hope, renewal, and restoration. A softer light after collapse. A reopening of trust. A quiet returning of life. Then the moon brings us into this realm of uncertainty, projection, instinct, confusion, and the unconscious. Because even after healing begins, clarity is not always immediate. There's often a passage through ambiguity, a passage through the deeper waters of the psyche. And only then do we arrive at the sun, where vitality, openness, visibility, joy, and clear life force returns to us. This is not shadow happiness. It's aliveness after the journey through uncertainty. So the major arcana don't only describe growth, they describe breakdown, bondage, rupture, healing, ambiguity, and the gradual return of the light. This is why they feel so true, because they're not sentimental, they're honest. And finally we arrive at awakening, integration and completion. As the journey nears its culmination, judgment appears. And judgment is awakening, calling for response and renewal. It's the moment when a deeper self begins to rise, when life is no longer asking merely for survival, recovery, or adaptation, but for response, for truth, for a new level of being. And then finally we're ready to come to the world. That's completion, integration, wholeness, and embodiment. This need not be perfection, but it will be fulfilled movement. The sense that what has been learned through the entire journey has now been gathered into a more complete way of being. And that to me is one of the most beautiful truths about the major arcana. They don't end in any form of domination or escape or transcendence that rejects life. They end in integration, in a whole being standing within the world. That's a very different kind of spiritual ending. It's not a rejection of embodiment, it's the fulfillment of it. Now, why does this all matter to you personally? Well, let's think about it. Why does this way of understanding the major arcana matter to you? It matters because when you begin to see the cards as a journey, you begin to recognize that what you're living may not be random. You may be in a hangman period of suspension. You may be moving through death and having to let go. You may be in a tower experience where false structures are breaking. You may be in a star phase of restoration. You may be in a moon phase of uncertainty. You may be in the world threshold when the real challenge is not failure, but simply a request to be open to accepting completion. And when you can name the kind of archetypal territory you're in, something shifts. You stop asking only what is wrong with me, and you begin to ask, what part of the journey am I in? What is the phase asking of me? What is ending? What is emerging? What is being tested and surrendered, broken open, healed, or integrated? This is a very different relationship to life. And that is one of the greatest gifts of the major arcana. They help us orientate ourselves within transformation. Another way to summarize this journey would be through a simple 11-step sequence. Step 1 is innocence. Step 2 is agency. Step 3 is relationship. Step 4 is discipline. Step 5 is inevitable conflict. Step 6 is a willingness to surrender. Step 7 is rupture. Step 8 is healing. Step 9 brings a new awakening. Step 10 creates integration. And step 11 is a fulfilling completion. Those movements in one form or another are what the major arcana keep bringing us back to. And they're not only spiritual abstractions, they're human realities. We live them in love, in work, in breakdown, in loss, in healing, in meaning, in identity, and in growth. That's why this journey matters, because it's not just a journey of tarot, it's a journey of being human. So the 22 major arcana are not only 22 cards with separate meanings, they're a complete symbolic map of inner transformation. They describe the path through which we begin, develop, struggle, surrender, break, heal, awaken, integrate, and complete. And when we learn to see them that way, tarot becomes something far deeper than prediction. It becomes a path of self-understanding, a spiritual psychology, a mirror of the soul's unfolding journey. If this is beginning to resonate for you, then do subscribe to our channel, because in the next videos I'll be exploring these archetypes in much more depth, including shadow work, the tree of life, and how the Major Arcana reveal the deeper patterns shaping our lives. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to seeing you for our next video.